Man, this thing is junk. Whoops, we got fire. Hey guys, it's Cam here, welcoming you back to the build room. In this week's episode, we are doing a roadkill style rescue on an RA28 first gen Celica. So stick around and check it out. So in last week's episode, I promised I would have a new car for the channel in today's episode, and boy, did I deliver at least half of that. It doesn't look like much, and sometimes you can judge a book by its cover. But the name of the game today is to give you guys a walk around, and then we're gonna see if we can get that car to fire up or fade into oblivion. Before we get to that though, I will remind you guys that we did launch the JDM Legends merch line in the episode last week. You should watch that if you haven't, I'll link to it up here. So anyway, Violet Crumbles is still dominating the garage, so that means that we are gonna be working outside today. So let's jump out there and see what we've got to work with. All right, and this is it. This will be a 76 or 77 build RA28. I don't think they were made in any other years. They were RA35s after that. And like I said, I wasn't kidding, this thing is junk. It's had a lot of rust, and that rust has been cut out expertly and repaired. If you look at this back hatch, the hatch is actually sitting about 1 centimetre proud of the body line because underneath here, there has been a giant metal plate welded in to fix rust, and that's obviously raised the height of the hinges, surprise, surprise. So now the hatch doesn't sit properly on the body. Dual struts though, and they're still working. That's impressive. Maybe not with the weight of glass. And there is some minor rust in the boot as well. You can see there's a tyre down there. There's some in the back here. And then, I don't know if that's considered structural, but yeah, that's not great down there either. The rear end was okay until the council came out to fix a power line near my house and backed their truck into it. So this took a bit of a hit. The quarters are again full of rust, as are the doors. Someone's started stripping it back, and I think probably just given up when they've seen the state of the thing. Also a very big sunroof shaped hole here and a drill hole for the antenna. And I would say that's probably led to the entire front windscreen rusting out. So this has all been replaced along here with sheet metal, and again, very poorly and overlapping old metal, so nothing's gonna fit right on this end either. Moving to the plush interior. Oh. Yeah, again, we've got a little bit of Flintstones power down here. There's a bunch of panels in here. I'll just get rid of these. These are all junk as well. All right, so interior wise, it's looking about the same. Some things that remind me very much of Violet Crumbles here. You can see over there all the rust forming on the sills there. So obviously that's rusting inside the sill as well. And while this looks like the only area of major floor rust at the moment, I can guarantee there's rust underneath this sound deadener and things like that. If you look at the hat job on the inside of the roof, some panel bond with some just folded over metal and welded to a chopped up interior brace. Yeah, not particularly impressive on that one. It looks like they've also replaced a section of roof here. You can see here the spot welds. That's also been replaced all the way along, albeit poorly. So yeah, this car really is the embodiment of absolute junk. There's basically no interior whatsoever. It's all been stripped out. We've got a pedal box, we've got a handbrake and a steering wheel, and that's all we might need for this. So yeah, let's have a look under the bonnet. Right under here, we have an 18R, just like the engine we have in Violet Crumbles. And I have no idea what state this engine is in. It could be no compression, it could not even really be assembled. It looks pretty good from the outside. The only thing that I've really done is I did pull off the oil pressure sensor, which was donated to Violet Crumbles, so I'll have to do something there before we start to try and fire this thing up. The promising thing is it doesn't look like the loom's been chopped at all. So while we've got no radiator and it looks like, well, we've got an alternator, which is good. So I won't worry about the radiator for now. We're not going to need that for what we're doing here, but we've got to have a battery and we've got to ideally have an ignition system. And it would be awesome if things like the throttle linkage and the ignition system in the car actually worked, so I could get in and start this up and move it. So yeah, I don't really have a lot of plans for this car. I actually bought it because I wanted the gearbox out of it, and the guy said, look, if you want the gearbox, you can pay for the gearbox and take the whole car. And he wasn't willing to separate, so I didn't have much of a choice. So yeah, I have this shell. Funnily enough, I have a lot of parts. I could actually take this on and try and rebuild it, which we'll have to think about soon. But yeah, no actual plans with it. I mean, it would probably make a good Lemons racer, and the price point that I got into this would give me basically an entire budget to spend on a driveline. But at the moment, the priority is getting it started and getting it up the drive. So yeah, this is where we're at. It is hot as balls here at the moment. So the first thing I'm gonna have to do is to get rid of the bonnet, because that's going to be in the way for everything I want to do today. And then I'm going to need some shelter if I'm going to do this without getting burnt to a crisp. So I'm just going to take care of that first and done. All right, man, that shade cloth makes such a difference. This will be a lot more comfortable now. Hopefully the lighting's not too messed up. So first up, as I said, we're working with the 18RC engine. It's a 2-litre inline 4-cylinder, single cam, 8-valve engine. Now, before I get too committed here, the first thing I want to do is to try to turn the motor over to make sure it's not completely seized. All we need to do here is throw a 19mm socket on the pulley bolt, attach to the crankshaft, and roll the engine over. As you can see, it's moving pretty easily here, which indicates there's at least some life left in the rotating assembly. Now I want to clean up everything so it's a bit easier to work on. There's also a heap of spider webs in here, and I'd prefer not to be bitten by one of Australia's deadliest while we're working on this. So I think what I'm going to do is just bust out the pressure washer and get stuck in. Before I do that though, I just want to throw a bolt into the hole where the oil pressure switch came out of, so we don't get any water ingress. And I'll also have to cover up the intake to the carb for the same reasons. Now in the pressure washer, I'm using a combination of hot water and siphon fed degreaser so that we really cut the muck, and it adds a little bit more surface rust patina to the rest of the car. And if I'm honest, the more I look at this thing while I'm washing it, the word junk just cycles over and over and over in my head. But once we're relatively clean and hopefully arachnid free, I want to remove some of the other brackets, hoses, and other garbage that's just going to get in our way while we're trying to work here. First up, I'll take out the main aircon hoses. Luckily, these were disconnected when I got the car, so we don't have to worry about degassing the system. And then I'll pull out the radiator support panel. I love these on first gen Celicas. I'm sure they weren't great for chassis flex, but they were great for access to the motor and the surrounds. The carbon canister here isn't going to be required either, so that can come out. Then we'll free up the air conditioning hard lines and pull the couple of bolts on the back of the receiver dryer unit so we can pull the whole thing out as a unit. There's no cooling system here, so we can also nix the heater hoses from both the engine piping and the heater core connections going through the firewall. The two tricks here are to use a socket to loosen hose clamps when you're in a hurry, and also you can use vice grips or slip joint pliers to break the seal on these really old rubber hoses to get them to come off with minimal effort. So now that there's a lot less clutter, I'm just going to do a couple of additional checks. The first thing is to check that the engine actually has oil, which it does. It's a little black, but it should be good. And then second, we check the plugs to make sure they're okay. Now these plugs look pretty foul, but if I clean them up with a wire brush, I think we'll probably get through this. Now we just need an electrical system. First up's a battery. I don't have a battery tray, but the car isn't going anywhere, so I'm not really worried about that. I'll just rest it in place for now. And I'm also just gonna make sure that these battery clamps are expertly fitted and snugged up, ready to go. It's about here that I realized I'd actually stolen the ignition loom off this car and fitted it into violet crumbles. So I had to steal it back from violet crumbles, and I'm gonna route it up behind the dash through the heater vents so that I can reach it from the outside of the car to turn the car over. From here, we're ready to try to see if it'll turn over, but I've just got one word of warning. So if you're gonna start up a motor that you haven't run in a very long time and you actually care about it and it's not complete junk, there's some steps you should do to protect the engine on that first fire up. Now, we're not gonna do any of those because roadkill, but I have covered it in a previous episode, which I'll link to just up here. And you should watch that if you care about what you have. All right, so the car's in neutral. All right, so I can hear a relay going. I don't know if you guys can hear that. When I turn the car to on. So the ignition barrel is obviously working, but we don't have a starter. Let me just have a look. Okay, so yeah, this is our starter down here. We've got the solenoid on top and the starter motor beneath it. It looks, okay. So we've got the main power running through here. This thing earths out through the engine, obviously. So it just has a main power, a big one going into the starter solenoid. And down here should be a trigger for that starter solenoid. I think it's this one, and this one's sitting in about the right place, so we're just going to try that. All right, we'll try that again. Whee! All right, the starter motor's working. And I also heard, I don't know if you guys, oh, hang on, we've got something going on with the coil here. I think our ballast resistor is doing something, so I'm just going to turn the car off. It's not good. That's letting some of the smoke out. Let's have a look at this. I mean, it's not well grounded. I need to do that up. I'll just do that up now. See what we've got missing around the loom. So we've got a negative and a positive on the coil itself. The ballast resistor is linked in. It's loose, but that's okay. That one isn't supposed to ground out. I mean, maybe it's just burning off some degreaser or something. We'll just try it again, and we'll just watch this to see if it smokes. All right, so that's accessories. That's ignition on, so we've got power now. And then if I crank it, we'll see what happens. All right, that might have just been burning something off, I don't know. Let's just see if we've got spark as well. We're looking for a spark to jump between the metal electrode and the bolt. There we go. All right, I hope you guys can see that, but we did get good spark. So we got air, spark, and now we need fuel. Now there's a couple of things I can see are already going to be a problem. We don't have a vacuum line on the vacuum advanced diaphragm, so that's going to cause it to have a funky timing. We also don't have a fuel system. So we've got a fuel filter going through the fuel pump with its return lines all hooked up, and then we've got a hard line that comes all the way around here and just gets chopped off. Don't know what's going on here. So yeah, no fuel between there and there. That's going to be somewhat of a problem. So I don't really need to know if this is going to run off the fuel system. And to be honest, the fuel tank is actually wide open and has had water in it for years. So that fuel tank's garbage. So we don't want to run anything through the fuel system anyway. So the alternative for that is just some AeroStart. So this is basically an aerosolized fuel in a can. And all I'm going to do is spray it down the throat of the carbies. And that way, if there is air being sucked into the motor, it's going to pull the AeroStart through, and that's going to be ignited by the spark plugs, and we'll be good to go. It's not going to run for long, but at least it will tell me if it's viable. And what I can do is, if we get it running on this one, I'll just try and keep it running with AeroStart for a little while. We can't run it for long anyway because there's no cooling system. Right, so we're going to get maybe 10-20 seconds out of this tops. Fire in the hole. Nearly went. All right. Woohoo! She's a runner. And that was in the fan. Get that out of the way. But to be honest, considering well, let's look at all the problems with this at the moment. I'm just looking now, there should be a line connected to that. So that's just pulling air into that cylinder, which is going to be leaning out that one massively. None of these vacuum lines are connected to where they should be. So, you know, the carby's going to be doing all sorts of funny things, but fuel and spark, and it wanted to turn over. So I'm just going to give it one more run and see how well we can get it going on AeroStart. And then I might see how the carby's doing, because I really do want to see if this is viable. I might be able to fill the float bowl here and see if it'll just run through a float bowl worth of fuel, or I might be able to jury rig some sort of fuel pump setup in the short term. All right, you can see when I've got my thumb over this, I need to block that off. All right, that's, man, that sounds good. All right, let me just block off that and we'll have another go at it. It also seems like we've got Good oil pressure. I completely forgot to put another oil pressure sender in there, but at least we know it's making oil pressure. So yeah, I better sort that out now. Who would have thought that a finger tight nut, the wrong thread, wouldn't have sealed that up properly? Whoop. Oh, God. All right. That oil is black. All right, so I don't have any hose that's the right size for that without stealing more stuff off Violet Crumbles, which I'm not going to do. So this is duct tape and your official Roadkill zip tie moment. Ah, that's not going anywhere. All right, I'm starting to run out of Aerostart as well, but we're going to give this a shot. I'm going to put plenty in to start with, just to give it the initial kick. Yeah, running out. This is going to be our last shot, I think. And I'll try it from a different spot, so I can hold the can a bit flatter. Fire in the hole. Yeah! Smooth as a baby's. Woohoo! She's a runner. All right, so at least we know we have the basics of a viable engine here. There's a bunch of other checks that I want to do, but unfortunately, they're going to have to wait until the next episode. So we'll leave it here for now, and we'll jump inside and talk about next steps and the giveaway. So, like I said, if you watched the last episode, you would know that we launched the JDM Legends line of merch. And if you want to check that out now, you can see it at shop.thebuildroom.com. And as part of that launch, in every episode between now and Christmas, we're giving away a TBR merch pack, including the JDM Leno shirt. Now, all you have to do to win is to comment below with your answer to this week's question. And so in this week's episode, we've got a new car, we've got a name for the series, which is going to be the Roadkill Rescue Series, but we don't yet have a name for the car. So I want to hear your suggestions for a name for that hunk of junk. Put that in the comment below, and that's all you need to do. It's pretty simple, and it doesn't cost you a thing. And as I said, there'll be a winner for each episode, starting from last week's episode and running through until Christmas Day. And what I'm going to do is announce the winners in the Christmas Day episode. So make sure you're watching for that one. Now next week, we're going to take a closer look at that engine and the driveline that's backing it up. And with any luck, we're going to get that thing to take its maiden voyage. And that'll be a short voyage because of the laws here in WA about driving unregistered vehicles, but hopefully it'll be one that is full of wind. So make sure you stay tuned for that one. So other than that, if you like first gen Celicas and you want to see some longer, more in-depth episodes, I'd recommend you watch the full Violet Crumbles series, which I'll link to up here. And then below that, we'll either have the next episode in the Roadkill Rescue series, and if that's not out, we'll link to some of our A90 Super content. Other than that, I just want to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on The Build Room. Bye for now.